On the day of the national finals, as soon as I reached the testing center, I heard the crows. Their caws were shrill and piercing, sounding more like human screams than birds. Panic surged through me, and I bolted away from the entrance. I refused to set foot inside that building, no matter how much people stared. Everyone thought I was having a mental breakdown, throwing my entire future away over nothing. My parents were shaking with a mixture of fury and absolute shame. "If the birds bother you, we will have the guards shoo them away," my dad hissed. "But you are going in there, Quinn. Stop this childish nonsense right now." I shook my head violently, my breath coming in ragged gasps. "I am not going back. Did you hear them? The crows, they are screaming for a reason." My mom finally snapped and slapped me across the face. The sting was sharp, but the fear in my chest was sharper. "If you do not take this exam today, your father and I are done with you," she sobbed. "We will act as if we never had a daughter." I looked her straight in the eyes, my voice trembling but certain. "Fine, then consider me a disappointment. No matter what you say, I am not stepping inside that hall today." Because the crows are mourning, my parents were stunned by my defiance. They could not wrap their heads around why I would sabotage my life over something so ridiculous. But I did not have time to explain the dread pooling in my gut. I turned and sprinted across the street, leaving them standing there in the dust. Behind me, the cacophony of the crows only grew louder. It was a cold, rhythmic screeching that made my skin crawl. I grew up in this city, and I had never seen a single crow here before today. Now the trees surrounding the testing center were heavy with them, like black rotting fruit. The school staff was already trying to spray them with water to drive them off, but the flock just circled in the air, refusing to leave the sky above the hall. My terror reached its peak as the sky seemed to turn dark. "Quinn, please stop this." My mom caught up to me, grabbing my wrist with a desperate strength. Her face was a mess of tears and smudged makeup. "The birds were just nesting here overnight, that is all. They are gone now. I am begging you, honey. Go back inside. I will give you anything you want after the test." I wrenched my hand away, my eyes wide. "Mom, their presence isn't a coincidence. It is a warning of a catastrophe." "What catastrophe? They are just birds." She fell to her knees right there on the sidewalk, her strength completely gone. "Your father and I worked 3 jobs to get you into this prep school. We gave up everything. You were our pride, the top of your class. You are 1 step away from the finish line. How can you do this to us? How can you be so selfish?" Her voice was no longer angry, just hollow and broken. I bit my lips so hard I tasted copper. It was true, we were a working-class family, and they had bled themselves dry for my tuition. They looked 10 years older than other parents because of the sheer exhaustion. I knew I was twisting a knife into their hearts right now, but I didn't budge. I pulled her up and gripped her shoulders. "Then come home with me. Forget the exam. Just please, let's get away from here." My mom screamed, hitting my chest with her fists. "Go home to what? To poverty? You are trying to kill us. If you walk away now, you are dead to this family." The words felt like a physical blow to my chest. But as I looked up, more crows were joining the swarm, their cries turning into a deafening roar. I had to survive this. I had to get them away. "Fine," I whispered, my heart breaking. "Then I am a bad daughter." My mother collapsed again, whispering to the pavement. "Just because of some birds? You would throw us away just because of some birds?" "Yes," I said, turning away. "Because the birds know what's coming." I forced myself to keep moving, never looking back at her. My pace quickened until I was in a full sprint, my lungs burning. But that shrill, haunting caw followed me like a shadow. I rushed into our apartment, grabbed my emergency savings, and bought as much water and canned food as I could carry. I locked myself in my bedroom and shoved the dresser against the door. Someone began pounding on the front door, probably a neighbor who had heard the news. I ignored them, drawing the blackout curtains until the room was a tomb. I crawled into the back of my closet, curling into a ball. The sound of the birds was muffled now, but the silence was almost worse. I checked my phone. It was 8:30 a.m., 30 minutes before the national finals began. The old rhyme my grandmother used to whisper haunted my mind. "Crows cry, death is nigh, to stay alive you must hide." I gnawed on my fingernails, scrolling through social media with shaking thumbs. A video popped up immediately. It was a live interview with my parents outside the school. They were leaning on each other, sobbing for the camera. We don't know why. She did it. She just heard some birds and lost her mind. We are poor. If she doesn't take this test, she will end up struggling just like us. She won't even answer our calls. She's abandoned her own blood. The comment section was a bloodbath. Strangers were calling me a vile brat and a waste of space. One woman commented, "With a kid like that, they should have left her at the fire station the day she was born." The younger crowd was even more vicious. "She's probably just a coward who didn't study," one girl wrote. "She's just using this omen crap to manipulate her parents." Disgusting. I didn't try to defend myself. Words wouldn't matter if everyone was dead. Suddenly, the pounding moved to my bedroom door, followed by a sharp, familiar voice. "Quinn Jensen. Open this door right now." It was Mr. Blackwell, my homeroom teacher. I always knew you kids from the trailer parks were destined for the factory floor, but this is pathetic. The school only sent me here to avoid a scandal. Don't waste my time. I covered my ears, burying my face in my knees. He cursed under his breath for a few minutes before the sound of his footsteps faded. Then came the texts from my aunts and cousins. "Quinn, have you lost your mind? This is your future. Think about the money your parents spent. You owe them every cent back." Each message felt like a needle pricking my soul. They thought they were helping, trying to shame me into success. They didn't realize the crows were the only ones telling the truth. I deleted every single message and crawled deeper into the shadows of the closet. Another video hit the trending page. My parents were in the back of a news van now, looking like they had aged 20 years. "Quinn, if you can see this, please tell us what is wrong. We just want you to have a life better than ours." They were still holding on to hope, trying to use guilt to drag me to that hall. But going to that hall meant the end. I wasn't ready to go yet. The occasional caw from outside made my limbs turn to ice. A suffocating weight pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I took a shaky breath and decided to post a single comment under the viral video. "Everyone needs to leave that testing center immediately. Go home and hide, or you will not survive." Within seconds people realized it was me. The vitriol was instantaneous. "Is this Quinn? You're not just crazy, you're malicious. Trying to ruin everyone else's day? Go to hell, Quinn. A traitor like you doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as us." I knew this would happen, but the words still stung like salt in a fresh wound. I bit my lip to keep from crying out loud. No one believed me. They wanted me to be the villain because it was easier than being afraid. I tried to tell myself it would be okay. If I could just survive the next few hours, they would see. Then they would know I wasn't a monster. I checked the seals on my closet door, stuffing extra clothes into the gaps. It was 8:50 a.m., 10 minutes until the start. The pressure was almost over. Just as I felt a sliver of safety, a thunderous crash echoed through the apartment. My heart stopped. Someone was kicking in my bedroom door. After 3 massive thuds, the wood splintered and the door flew open. They didn't take long to find me in the closet. My parents, 2 police officers, and a group of reporters crowded into my small room. My mom lunged forward, grabbing my arm with a terrifying grip. "Quinn," they said. "If you get there within 15 minutes of the start, they'll let you in." Her nails dug into my skin as she tried to drag me out. The fear returned tenfold. They still wouldn't let it go. I fought back, kicking and screaming, trying to wedge myself into the corner. "I am not going. I told you, I am not going to that place." Mom wouldn't let go, screaming to the officers behind her. "Help me, please. I won't let her destroy her life over a tantrum. Quinn, you will hate us now, but you will thank us later. Move." The reporters were shoving microphones and cameras into the cramped space. They were like vultures, waiting for the perfect shot of my breakdown. "Quinn, your parents are literally begging. How can you be so heartless?" one journalist asked. "Honestly, she just needs a good slap," an officer muttered. "Girls these days are too soft." I was being overpowered, dragged across the floor toward the light. Desperation turned into a sharp, jagged rage. "If you force me into that room, I will shred every single person's answer sheet. I screamed. I will make sure nobody passes. I'll burn the whole hall down. My dad looked at me with pure disgust. What a curse you are. Why are you obsessed with those damn birds? Mom completely broke down, running to the window and flinging it open. She leaned half her body out over the ledge, her voice a shrill shriek. I don't care about crows or disasters. If you don't go to that exam, I'm jumping. I lunged forward to grab her, my voice cracking in a desperate howl. Mom. Why can't? You see? If I go there I am dead. You are the ones forcing me to my end. The officers rushed to pull her back from the window. My dad turned and delivered a heavy blow to my cheek, his eyes full of hatred. Do you think those birds are going to eat you? Is that it? An officer knelt in front of me, showing me a live feed on his phone. Look, Quinn, there isn't a single crow left at the school. We cleared them out. We have tactical teams on site. Everyone is safe. Nothing is going to happen. I stared at the screen. The school looked peaceful. Guards were patrolling and students were filing in calmly. It looked perfectly normal. The people in the room continued their barrage of pleas and insults. Looking at my mother's shattered face, I felt my resolve flicker. Was I wrong? Was I truly just losing my mind? I stared at the corner of the video screen, focusing on a shadow near the roof. There was one crow left, huddled in the gutter. As the camera zoomed in, I saw it. A thick, dark red liquid leaking from its eyes. It was crying blood. The realization hit me like a physical shock. The omens were real. I scrambled backward, shaking so hard my teeth clattered. My father grabbed my wrist again, his voice dropping to a weary, mournful tone. Quinn, we aren't trying to hurt you. We're scared for you. With your grades, you could get a full ride. You could change our family's destiny. You can be reckless with your own life. But as parents, we cannot let you fail. I looked at their tired faces. I knew they loved me in their own twisted way. But their love was a noose. My silence seemed to signal a breakthrough to my father. Look, if you really can't do it today, we will let you retake it next year. We'll pay for the prep. My mom looked at me with a glimmer of hope. Since they stopped pulling me, I finally gave a small, defeated nod. The reporters and the police finally began to file out of the room. The weight on my chest lightened just a fraction. I sat on the edge of my bed, watching the clock. 9 a.m. The test had started. As long as I wasn't in that building, I was safe. But before I could breathe, my mother grabbed my wrists and snapped a pair of zip ties around them. The police officers burst back into the room immediately. Quinn, I'm sorry, but we have to do this, one of them said as they lifted me up. We're just taking you to see a specialist to check on your mental state. My parents looked away, refusing to meet my eyes. They said you're having a psychotic break from the stress, Quinn. There's a doctor who will evaluate you for free. It's for your own good. Once they fix your head, you'll be able to go back and take the late entry exam. They carried me down the stairs like a piece of luggage. I fought them with every ounce of strength, biting the arm of the officer holding me. Liars. You're all liars. My mom wiped the sweat from my forehead as they shoved me into the back of a squad car. We're doing this because we love you, she whispered, her voice trembling. The doctor said he can make you better. He can make you normal again. I slammed my head against the car window until it bled, screaming for mercy. I told you I'd wait a year. Why are you doing this? Going to that school is a death sentence. Why won't you believe me? Despite my frantic struggling, they slammed the door and locked it. Just as the engine started, the psychiatrist sitting in the front seat gasped. A breaking news notification flashed on his phone. The headline read, Mass Casualty Event at National Testing Center. He clicked the video, and the reporter's panicked voice filled the car. Students are collapsing in the halls. They are seizing, foaming at the mouth. The exam has been suspended. We are seeing hundreds of casualties. The cause is unknown. The testing center mentioned was mine. The silence in the car was sudden and deafening. Suddenly, the reporter screamed. My God, the parents, the people outside are falling too. The phone slipped from the psychiatrist's hand and clattered onto the dashboard. On the screen, chaos exploded behind the reporter. Parents waiting outside the gates were dropping one after another like puppets with their strings cut. Some convulsed violently. Others clawed at their throats, coughing black blood onto the pavement. And above them all, the crows screamed. Not a few anymore. Thousands. They poured out of the sky in a living storm, blotting out the sun. The camera shook as people ran in every direction. Someone slammed into the reporter, and the live stream filled with static before cutting dead. The officer driving whispered, horrified, "What the hell?" My mother slowly turned toward me. Her face had gone gray. "You knew," she whispered. The squad car radio exploded with overlapping voices. "All units respond. Mass poisoning suspected." "No, not poisoning. They're attacking each other." "Jesus Christ." Screaming crackled through the speakers before the signal died completely. The psychiatrist's breathing became shallow and uneven. He kept replaying the footage with trembling fingers, as if forcing himself to deny what he'd already seen. Then the first cough came from the officer beside me. A wet cough. He wiped his mouth and stared at the blood coating his hand. Everyone froze. "No," he whispered. The second officer immediately shoved himself away from him. "Don't touch me." The coughing intensified. The officer began choking violently, eyes bulging as dark foam spilled from his lips. He clawed at his throat, slamming against the dashboard in panic. The squad car swerved wildly. My father shouted. My mother screamed. The car smashed sideways into a guardrail with a deafening crunch. For a few seconds, everything went silent except for the ringing in my ears. Then came the crows. Tap, tap, tap. Their claws scraped across the roof of the vehicle. I lifted my head slowly. Dozens of black eyes stared through the windows. Watching. Waiting. The infected officer suddenly let out an inhuman shriek and lunged at the driver. Blood sprayed across the windshield as the two men crashed into each other in blind terror. The psychiatrist fumbled for the door handle, hyperventilating. "We need to get out. We need to." A crow slammed into the window beside him hard enough to crack the glass. Then another. And another. The psychiatrist broke. He threw open the door and stumbled into the street. The crows descended instantly. A black tidal wave swallowed him whole. His screams lasted less than 10 seconds. My mother began sobbing uncontrollably. Oh God, Quinn." She looked at me like she was seeing a stranger. "No," I said shakily. "Don't open the doors. Don't go outside." But panic had already infected them worse than any disease. My father kicked open his door and staggered out into the road, screaming for help. The crows ignored him. For one horrible moment, I thought maybe he would survive. Then he froze. A woman stood in the middle of the empty intersection ahead. She wore a blood-soaked school uniform, one of the students from the testing center. Her head twitched unnaturally. Then she looked up. Her eyes were completely black. My father stumbled backward in horror. The girl smiled. And every person collapsed around the nearby streets slowly began standing back up. Not dead. Not alive either. Their limbs jerked at impossible angles as they turned toward the sound of movement. Toward my father. He started screaming my name as they rushed him. I slammed my eyes shut. I still heard everything. The tearing. The begging. My mother's hysterical shrieks. When silence finally returned, I opened my eyes again. Nothing remained of him except blood smeared across the asphalt. My mother stared blankly through the windshield, her mind shattered. Then she whispered the words that finally broke me. "You were trying to save us." Tears blurred my vision instantly. Outside, the city had descended into madness. Smoke curled into the darkened sky. Sirens wailed endlessly in the distance before cutting off one by one. And above it all, the crows kept mourning. My zip-tied hands trembled in my lap. The old rhyme echoed through my head again. Crows cry, death is nigh. To stay alive, you must hide. But this time, I realized something terrifying. The rhyme never said the disaster would end. My mother stopped crying after that. Not because she calmed down. Because something inside her had simply broken. She sat motionless in the passenger seat, staring at the blood smeared across the cracked windshield where my father had died. Her lips moved silently, repeating the same words over and over. "You were trying to save us." The infected officer in the front had finally gone still too. His body twisted unnaturally against the dashboard. The smell of blood and vomit filled the squad car so thickly it coated the back of my throat. Outside, the city sounded wrong. Not loud. Empty. No traffic. No distant chatter. Only occasional screams cut short far away, and the endless cawing overhead. The crows hadn't left. If anything, more kept arriving. I twisted my wrists against the zip ties until the plastic cut into my skin raw. Finally, one wrist slipped free. My hands shook violently as I unlocked the door. The moment I stepped out of the car, every crow nearby went silent. Thousands of black eyes turned toward me at once. My pulse stopped. But they didn't attack. They simply watched. Like guards. Or witnesses. A cold wind swept through the street, carrying the metallic scent of blood. Bodies littered the sidewalks now. Some looked peaceful, collapsed mid-step. Others were mangled beyond recognition. And some were moving. Not many. Just enough. A businessman slowly dragged himself across the pavement using one broken arm. A teenager stood motionless beneath a bus stop, repeatedly smashing his forehead into the glass hard enough to leave bloody cracks. None of them looked human anymore. Their eyes were pitch black. I grabbed my mother carefully. "Mom, we have to move." She resisted at first, weak and numb. But when one of the twitching figures down the street suddenly jerked its head toward us, survival finally kicked back into her body. We ran. The crows followed overhead. Not swooping. Escorting. Every few streets we passed horrors that made my stomach twist harder. People attacking loved ones with animal-like rage. Others kneeling in the roads praying hysterically. Buildings burning with no firefighters coming. Phones everywhere blasting emergency alerts nobody could answer anymore. One giant screen outside a shopping mall still played a news broadcast. The anchorwoman was openly sobbing on live television. Authorities are urging everyone to remain indoors. We repeat, do not approach infected individuals. Symptoms include seizures, bleeding from the eyes, and severe aggression. The broadcast suddenly cut to static. Then a single sentence appeared across the screen. Do not look into their eyes. The screen went black. My mother grabbed my arm harder. "Quinn, what is happening?" I didn't answer. Because deep down, I already knew this wasn't a disease. Diseases don't make crows gather before they begin. Diseases don't make people rise after death. And diseases definitely don't make every animal in the city disappear overnight except for one species. The crows knew. They had always known. As we hurried through an alley, something crashed nearby. A little boy stumbled out from behind a dumpster. Maybe 8 years old. His school uniform was stained red. "Help," he whimpered weakly. My mother immediately moved toward him on instinct. "Oh my God." I yanked her back so hard she nearly fell. "Don't touch him." The boy slowly lifted his head. His eyes were black. Completely black. And he was smiling far too wide. My mother screamed. The thing wearing the boy's face lunged at us with terrifying speed. Before it reached us, a blur of black dropped from the sky. A crow slammed directly into the creature's face. Then another. Then hundreds. The infected child shrieked as the flock swarmed him violently, tearing at flesh and eyes until the thing disappeared beneath writhing feathers. My mother collapsed to her knees vomiting. I stared at the crows in horror. They weren't warning people anymore. They were hunting. One crow landed nearby, and tilted its head toward me. Its eyes reflected something impossible. Not intelligence. Recognition. Then it opened its beak. And in a voice that sounded horrifyingly human, it whispered, "Hide before sunset." My blood turned to ice. The crow kept staring at me, its black feathers ruffling in the wind. Then it repeated, more clearly this time, "Hide before sunset." My mother heard it too. I knew because she made a choking sound beside me and scrambled backward across the pavement like she was trying to escape a nightmare. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no, birds don't talk." The crow snapped its head toward her so sharply it looked mechanical. "Not birds," it croaked. Then it took off into the air. The entire flock above us shifted with it, swirling across the darkening sky like smoke. My mother grabbed my shoulders hard enough to hurt. "Quinn, what did that mean? What happens at sunset?" I looked west instinctively. The sun was already sinking. Too fast. Had hours passed already? The light spilling between the buildings looked wrong somehow. Thicker, darker, stained orange-red. Like diluted blood. And all around us, the infected were becoming more active. The twitching businessman I had seen earlier was standing now. So were others. Dozens. Their movements had become jerky and purposeful instead of random. Like they were waking up. A scream echoed nearby. Then another. Something massive crashed several blocks away. People were still alive out there. But not for long. We need shelter, I said immediately. Not home. Home had windows. Too many entrances. Too exposed. My eyes landed on an underground parking garage across the street. Concrete. Minimal entrances. Dark. Safe. At least safer. I dragged my mother toward it as the city around us descended further into panic. A man sprinted past us screaming into his phone, begging someone to open a door. He didn't make it 10 feet before 3 infected tackled him to the pavement. I forced myself not to look back. The crows above us exploded into frantic cries again. Caw, caw, caw. The sound was urgent now, warning us. We reached the parking garage entrance just as the sunlight dimmed another shade darker. Inside, maybe 30 survivors had already gathered. Families, office workers, students still wearing exam badges around their necks. The second they saw us, several people immediately recognized me. A girl near the back pointed with trembling rage. That's her. Silence spread through the garage. Then came the whispers. The crazy crow girl. She knew. She's the one from the live stream. A middle-aged man marched toward me, eyes bloodshot from panic and grief. My daughter was at that testing center. His voice cracked. You said everyone would die. I swallowed hard. I tried to warn people. And my daughter is dead, he screamed. Several others started shouting too. You scared everyone for attention. You caused panic. You knew this would happen somehow. She probably poisoned the school. My mother suddenly stepped in front of me. For the first time all day. She tried to save people, she said shakily. Nobody listened. Grief had already turned into anger. And anger always needed a target. A woman rushed forward and slapped me hard across the face. You cursed us. The crowd surged closer. Then the crows outside started screaming. Not normal cawing. Shrieking. Violent. Desperate. Every single person froze. The garage lights flickered once. Twice. Then died completely. Darkness swallowed everything. At the exact same moment, the sun disappeared below the horizon. Something moved in the upper levels of the garage. Not infected. Something else. Heavy footsteps echoed slowly overhead. Thud. 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 Too heavy to be human. A terrified voice whispered somewhere in the dark. What was that? Then came a wet crunch. Someone screamed. The sound cut off instantly. People began panicking, shoving each other blindly in the darkness. Phones lit up one by one. And in those scattered beams of light, I finally saw what the crows had been warning about. The infected from daytime were changing. Bones cracking. Limbs stretching. Mouths splitting open far wider than humanly possible. One thing crawled down a concrete pillar like a spider, its black eyes gleaming in the dim light. And behind it, towering in the darkness between the parked cars, stood something at least 8 feet tall. Its body was unnaturally thin, wrapped in twitching skin that looked too loose for its frame. Its head bent sideways with a horrible cracking sound. Then it smiled. Every crow outside fell silent. And the creature spoke in dozens of overlapping human voices at once. We found you. The garage exploded into chaos. People ran blindly between the cars, screaming and crashing into concrete pillars. Phone flashlights swung wildly through the darkness, catching flashes of things that should not exist. The towering creature took one slow step forward. Crack. Its legs bent backward like an animal's. Another step. Crack. Its neck straightened inch by inch until its head sat perfectly upright. The skin around its mouth peeled wider and wider, splitting all the way to the sides of its skull. Inside were rows of human teeth. Not sharp. Just too many. A teenage boy near me broke first. He bolted toward the exit ramp. Nope. Nope. I'm not staying here. Wait. I screamed. The crows outside instantly erupted into furious shrieks. The boy made it halfway up the ramp before something dropped from above. Not flew. Dropped. Like gravity itself had spat it out. A massive black shape landed directly on him with a crunch that echoed through the entire garage. People screamed harder. The thing crouched over him on all fours, tearing into him before he could even finish screaming. Phone lights hit it from different angles. Too many limbs. Arms bending the wrong way. A human face stretched across its chest, silently mouthing words over and over. And its eyes, dozens of them, blinked independently beneath translucent skin. The creature near us tilted its head happily. Hungry. It whispered in overlapping voices. Then every infected person in the garage lunged at once. The crowd shattered. I grabbed my mother and ran between parked cars as bodies slammed together behind us. Screaming echoed everywhere now, mixed with wet tearing sounds and the horrible clicking noises the creatures made while moving. A little girl cried for her dad somewhere in the darkness. The crying stopped abruptly. I didn't look. I couldn't. My mother was barely keeping up, sobbing so hard she could hardly breathe. Quinn, what are they? I don't know. But deep down I did know one thing. These things had not come from the infection. The infection was only the first stage. Sunset changed them. We ducked behind an SUV just as one of the transformed creatures skittered across the ceiling above us. Its limbs dug into concrete like hooks. Black saliva dripped onto the car hood inches from my face. It sniffed the air. My mother covered her mouth to stop herself from crying out. The thing slowly turned its head almost fully upside down, searching. Then, caw. A single crow slammed into its face. The creature shrieked in fury and scrambled after it into the darkness. I stared after the bird in shock. The crows were protecting us. Not everyone. Us. Why? Before I could think further, an old man crawled out from beneath a nearby van. His leg was mangled, leaving a smear of blood behind him. Please, he whimpered. Help me. My mother immediately moved toward him again. But this time I noticed it. The shadows around him were moving wrong. Too many limbs tucked beneath the van. Waiting. Mom, stop. The old man's terrified expression vanished instantly. His jaw unhinged downward with a sickening crack. Something underneath the van grabbed his body from behind and folded him backward like paper. Then a new voice emerged from inside his collapsing chest. Smart girl. I dragged my mother away just as several creatures burst out from under the vehicle in a frenzy of twitching limbs. We ran deeper into the garage. The lower levels became colder and darker the farther we descended. Emergency lights flickered dim red overhead now, bathing everything in the color of dried blood. And everywhere we looked, more survivors were disappearing. Not always dying. Sometimes being dragged away alive while screaming. The creatures seemed to enjoy that more. Suddenly, a metal security gate slammed shut behind us with a deafening bang. I spun around. A man stood beside the control box. One of the police officers from earlier. Except his eyes were black now. Not fully transformed yet. He smiled weakly. You shouldn't run, he said calmly. They don't like chasing. Heavy clicking sounds echoed from the darkness behind us. Dozens of them. Closing in slowly. The infected officer leaned closer to the bars. And in a voice almost gentle he whispered. They've been under the city for a very long time. My mother grabbed the bars and screamed at the officer to open the gate. He just smiled wider. Then something inside his body moved. Not metaphorically. Physically. A bulge crawled beneath the skin of his throat like a nest of worms. His jaw twitched violently, and black liquid began pouring from his nose. You hear them now, don't you? He whispered to me. The clicking behind us grew louder. Closer. I didn't waste another second. Run. We sprinted deeper into the underground levels as the officer's laughter echoed behind us, until it suddenly cut off with a wet crunch. The creatures had gotten him. Good. The lower garage wasn't meant for public parking. The concrete walls turned rough and unfinished. Rusted pipes lined the ceiling. Old warning signs hung everywhere. City access restricted. Authorized personnel only. And then I saw the elevator. Its doors were already open. Fresh blood smeared the inside walls. My mother shook her head immediately. No. Absolutely not. But the sounds behind us were multiplying fast. Skittering, crawling, whispering. Please, voices called softly from the darkness. Help us. Mom. Dad. The creatures were mimicking people now. One even copied my father's voice perfectly. Quinn, sweetheart. My mother broke down crying again. I shoved her into the elevator and slammed the button for the lowest level. The doors began closing. Then a hand shot through the gap. Not human. Too many fingers. The doors strained open as the creature forced itself between them inch by inch. I finally saw it fully under the flickering lights. It had once been a student. Its exam badge still hung around its stretched neck. But its torso had split vertically into a mouth lined with teeth. Arms protruded from inside its ribcage, clawing outward desperately. And its face. Its face was still conscious. Tears streamed from its black eyes. Kill me, it begged weakly. Then the thing inside its body noticed us. The student's expression instantly twisted into a grin. I grabbed the emergency fire axe mounted inside the elevator, and swung with everything I had. The blade buried itself in the creature's arm. Black blood exploded across the walls. The thing shrieked so loudly the lights burst overhead. I hacked again. And again. Finally the severed limb fell free, and the doors slammed shut. The elevator dropped. Fast. Way too fast. My mother clung to the railing, sobbing hysterically as the floor numbers kept descending past any level that should have existed. B12. B13. B14. The garage above only had 6 underground levels. The elevator shouldn't have been able to go this deep. Then the numbers disappeared completely. The elevator kept falling anyway. My ears popped painfully. The temperature plummeted. And then, ding, the doors opened. Not onto a parking level. Onto a city. An entire underground city hidden beneath ours. Ancient stone buildings stretched endlessly beneath a cavern so massive I couldn't see the ceiling. Dim red lanterns flickered along empty streets. Strange symbols were carved into every surface. And everywhere, crows. Thousands upon thousands of them perched silently across rooftops and statues. Watching us. Waiting. My mother whispered shakily. What is this place? A voice answered from the darkness ahead. The place your people buried us. An old woman stepped into the lantern light. Unlike the infected, her eyes were completely normal. But the crows gathered around her feet like loyal dogs. She looked directly at me. At last, she said softly. The listener has returned. The what? I asked. The old woman ignored the question entirely. Instead, she looked past me toward the elevator shaft above. Her expression darkened. They followed you. The crows instantly exploded into noise. Caw, caw, caw. From somewhere far above us came a distant metallic shriek. The elevator. Something was climbing down it. Fast. The old woman slammed a staff against the stone ground once. Every crow in sight took flight simultaneously, forming a swirling black cloud overhead. Move, she ordered. My mother and I ran after her through the underground streets as horrifying noises echoed behind us. Metal bent. Concrete cracked. Something enormous was descending toward the city below. This way. The old woman led us into a temple carved directly into the cavern wall. The second we crossed the entrance, the crows outside fell silent again. Inside, hundreds of candles flickered around murals painted across the stone walls. Murals of cities burning, people transforming, and crows circling above mountains of corpses. At the center of every painting stood the same symbol, a black eye surrounded by wings. My stomach dropped. I had drawn that symbol absent-mindedly my entire life. In notebooks. Margins. Condensation on windows. I never knew why. The old woman noticed my expression immediately. Of course, she murmured. The memories remained. My mother grabbed her arm desperately. Please just tell us what is happening. The woman finally turned toward us fully. This is not the first collapse. She pointed toward the murals. Every few centuries, they wake beneath the earth. Your people called them demons once. Then gods. Then infections. Each generation gives them a different name to make themselves feel less afraid. A thunderous boom shook the cavern overhead. Dust rained from the ceiling. The things above were entering the underground city now. The old woman continued quickly. They feed on humanity until civilization breaks. Then they sleep again beneath the cities built over the dead. No, my mother whispered. That's impossible. The old woman looked at her coldly. Your daughter heard the warning cries because she was born to. Then she looked at me again. The crows only speak to one bloodline. A terrible realization began forming in my chest. My grandmother. I whispered. The old woman nodded slowly. She was the last listener. Images flashed through my mind suddenly. My grandmother teaching me strange rhymes. Hanging black feathers above windows. Refusing to live near crowded places. The way she'd stare silently at birds for hours. I thought she was eccentric. The old woman stepped closer. When the crows gather, the listener must guide survivors below before sunset. My breath caught. Guide survivors? You abandoned the duty. The words hit like a slap. Outside, screams echoed through the underground streets now. The creatures had arrived. The old woman's voice sharpened. Thousands died above, because no listener opened the paths in time. My mother slowly turned toward me in horror. No, she whispered. I staggered backward. I didn't know. Of course you didn't, the woman snapped. Your grandmother died before she could prepare you. So when the crows screamed, you hid instead of leading. The guilt hit harder than anything so far. All those people. All those deaths. Because I ran. The temple suddenly shook violently. One of the giant doors outside buckled inward with a massive dent. Then another. The creatures were here. The old woman grabbed my wrist. Cry later. If the temple falls, humanity ends tonight. Another deafening impact hit the doors. Cracks spread through the stone. My mother looked between us in panic. What do we do? The old woman pointed toward the deepest chamber of the temple. There is only one way to seal them again. The doors exploded inward. Darkness poured into the temple, and dozens of black-eyed creatures crawled through the opening at once. Behind them, ducking beneath the shattered doorway, came something enormous, at least 15 feet tall. Its body was made from fused human corpses twisted together into one gigantic shape, and every face attached to it was screaming.
The temple went dead silent for half a second. Even the crows stopped. Then the giant thing stepped fully inside. The floor cracked beneath its weight. Every face stitched into its body screamed at a different pitch, overlapping into a single unbearable sound that made my teeth vibrate. The smaller creatures around it dropped to their knees instinctively, like they were subordinate. The old woman didn't move. She only exhaled. So, it is awake completely this time. My mother grabbed my hand so hard it hurt. Quinn, what is that? I couldn't answer, because I felt it looking at me, not with one set of eyes. With all of them. Hundreds. The stitched creature tilted its head, and the screaming stopped instantly. Then, in a voice that sounded like every person it had ever consumed speaking in unison, it said, "Listener." The word echoed through the temple like a bell. The old woman stepped forward. Yes. The creature's body convulsed slightly, as if pleased. You are late. I am always late, she replied calmly. But I always arrive. A deep, grinding sound filled the cavern as more of the creatures pressed into the temple behind it. The walls were beginning to fail. Cracks spiderwebbed through ancient stone. The old woman turned to me one last time. This is the only way to close the cycle. She pointed at the symbol carved into the floor, the same black eye surrounded by wings. Someone must become the new anchor. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? My mother shook her head violently. No. No, absolutely not. There has to be another way. There isn't, the old woman said simply. The giant creature took another step forward. The temple groaned. The crows outside began screaming again, frantic now, circling like a storm trying to break through stone. The old woman placed her staff into my hands. It felt impossibly heavy. You can hear them, she said. You always could. That is why you survived longer than the others. I looked down at the staff, then at my mother. Her face was pale, broken, terrified, but she wasn't arguing anymore. She understood. That made it worse. The creature leaned closer, its stitched faces twitching. Return, it whispered. Let us finish what was started beneath your cities. The old woman stepped beside me. You don't defeat it, she said quietly. You contain it. And the crows? I asked. She almost smiled. They were never warning you about death. A pause. They were warning you about waking it fully. The temple shook again, harder this time. The ceiling began collapsing in chunks. Light from the outside cavern flickered, like a dying pulse. My mother reached for me. Quinn, please. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I saw everything at once. The testing center, the screaming city, my father, the sky full of crows. All of it connected, all of it repeating. Cycles upon cycles of the same ending. I opened my eyes and stepped onto the symbol. The moment my foot touched it, the entire temple went still. The crows outside stopped screaming. Even the creatures froze. The staff in my hands burned cold. And something inside me shifted. Not pain, not fear, recognition. As if something had finally clicked into place that had always been waiting. The old woman bowed her head slightly. It is done. My mother screamed my name, but her voice sounded far away now, like it was coming through water. The giant creature made one final sound. Not rage, not hunger, confusion. Then everything went white. When I woke up, I was standing alone in the underground cavern. No temple, no city, no creatures, only silence. Above me, faint light filtered down from a distant crack in the earth where the surface should have been. And circling it, a single crow. It landed near me gently, tilted its head, then spoke softly, almost kindly. Cycle paused. A beat. Listener active. The crow took off into the darkness, and as it did, thousands of wings stirred somewhere far away, not screaming this time, just waiting. I looked down at my hands. The mark was still there. And I understood, finally, the part no one had ever survived long enough to learn. It was never about escaping the ending. It was about who had to stay behind to reset it. Above me, the world was quiet, but not safe. Just sleeping. And now, or it knew my name.